So, man, we're joined here now with Felipe Eichenberger, the head strength and conditioning coach for the Denver Nuggets. Thank you for joining the Athletes podcast, man.
Thanks for having me.
So, tell the listeners a bit about what you do exactly with the Denver Nuggets organization.
It's strength and conditioning. So get the players bigger, faster, stronger. That's the goal that everybody have it, right? So, but I go above that. My goal is to get the players prepared to play their max capacity. So, there's so many research out there about different things that people don't agree with, things that I might do. That they're like, well, research shows differently. Why do you, for example, static stretch somebody before that research shows that might hinder the player's performance? And I'm like, well, it's about getting the player ready. If the player feels good when I static stretch the player, and I know the research, I make sure that he's activated after I static stretch the player. So it's like I'm there to make sure that you feel good before the game. And so that's the goal. I mean, we can read whatever we want. We can, find different literature, but strength conditioning is bigger, faster, stronger. But at the same time, my job is there to make sure that the injury rates are lower and you're strong, of course, and you feel good to play the game.
So what got you into it specifically? I saw you did an internship back in 2011 with an organization, the Impact Basketball Academy in Las Vegas. Were you originally here in North America? Did you come across? What's your backstory?
I came to the United States to play basketball. So I played in a small school in Oklahoma for 4 years, got my degree in sports science. And then, as a player, I always wanted to make it into the NBA. And, as my senior year came around, I'm like, well, it's going to be tough to play in the NBA. I mean, the NBA is just a different level. But from day one, I mean, I love strength and conditioning. I love the gym. My sister was a swimmer, so I used to go train with her sometimes, watch her train. And it's just like, it's rewarding because if you put the work in, you get results. So I'm like, man, this is cool. So I start like kind of reading a little bit more. I didn't really know that's like you could be a strength conditioning coach in the NBA, for example. Back in the day, back when I first started, only few teams had a strength conditioning coach. So working in the gym, just like my passion was like, well, I want to make the NBA, but if I cannot make it as a player, why not strength conditioning? So that's kind of like how it started. Like I created a new goal in my mind. It was like, I want to go to the best level in the NBA, or the best level, which is the NBA. So why not strength conditioning? So I start studying and start focusing on the goal, and here I am.
Yeah, I have to tell a bit of a backstory. When I reached out to you about coming on the podcast, you said, and I quote, "I'm not an athlete, but I'll come on."
Yeah.
And I kind of laughed, and I told a bunch of people, I'm like, man, this guy is training the best athletes in the world, is an absolute beast in his own right. And he claims he's not even an athlete. So I have to let you know the fact that you are certainly an athlete, and you're training some incredible athletes. So who are some of the best athletes that you've been working with? I know you've spent probably the length of, you started working with the Nuggets in 2011 as an associate strength and conditioning coach. So you've spent almost 10 years with the organization. How have you seen that transform and grow?
It's interesting to me because people might think I'm crazy, but I see athleticism different, right? If you ask somebody what's athleticism, it's like you can jump high, you can run fast, and you can, do all those things very well. In my mind, you have to be athletic. Even if you're the most unathletic player, you have to be athletic to do what you do. So for example, we have a post player that's very good, and people say like, he's not athletic, but 99% of the league cannot do what he does.
Mm.
And in order to be able to move the way that he moves, which is very smooth, he has to be athletic. But he can only jump whatever 5 inches off the ground. So it's like people say like, oh, he's not athletic, but I'm like, well, he can move really well. Like athleticism is like if he's jumping high and running faster. I mean, this dude is an all-star and he's playing really well. So it's like, well, how can you say he's not athletic? And you that can jump out of the gym, you can run all day, you're not even at his level. So it's like, anyways, and I don't know if I'm trying to protect our best player or not, but I think athleticism is interesting. I mean, I've seen some freaks. I've seen, like Nate Robinson, short guy, just like jumping out, like unbelievable things, right? Like whatever, like 6 weeks after his knee surgery, ACL surgery, this dude is jumping a box like it's like crazy just by playing around too. I mean, and it's like I've seen some really good athletes. I mean, I've seen one situation where the player came up and dunked it, and then like, oh shoot, hit his eye at the rim. So it's like, things like that in the NBA happens a good amount. I've seen, like Kenneth Reed. I mean, Nene, all those guys are very, very athletic, very, very athletic for what we know. But the way that I think, like I said, you can be athletic. It's just a different way.
Right. And how are you specifically trying to make sure that keep these guys in the best shape possible? Because one of the main factors now, especially once they're getting to the NBA, is the fact that they've been playing the sport for 10, 15, 20 years. There's a lot of wear and tear on the body. Are you doing a lot from the recovery side as well, and making sure that you're calculating how much work these guys are putting in so that they're getting the appropriate rest?
Yeah. So I mean, we do sports science, which collect data, we analyze data, we see where the players should be and where they are. So we have game data that's similar to practice data. So we compare the data and be like, hey, the practice today was really hard. Practice today was 1.5 games load wise than what's supposed to be. So it's a very high, load practice. So as you said, it's very interesting. Strength conditioning is a very interesting job, just because players are coming to the league younger and younger. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like before they had to stay more than a year in college. Now they have to stay a year. Now they're even thinking about after high school you can go drafted. And a lot of players now not even going to college. They try to go the G League, the development league, to come to the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
So it's tough for me, and it's tough to know like what they come with. For me, majority of the players that come to Denver, like, or come to the NBA that I see, they are very poor movers, right?
Okay.
So they can't, like, and it's not on their college strength coach.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what happens a lot is like, hey, you have an NBA potential. A lot of players, it's just a lot of strength coaches are kind of like afraid to train the players because they don't want to injure the player. They don't want a player to get injured, right? And
Interesting.
another thing is like the player is, I'm just staying here for a year, so I'm not gonna even be in the weight room. So it's like that combination kind of hurts the player in the long run, because as soon as he gets to the league, so if you have a high pick, for example, we have like a top 10 pick, you most likely are going to be starting, right?
Right.
Because your team probably didn't do very well the season before. So if you are starting, you have to be ready, and you come in as a poor mover. You come in as not liking the weight room. That can hurt you, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, the goal is to kind of teach each guy that comes in, like we have a program. It's like, hey, we're going to teach you at first, we're going to teach you how to squat. We're going to teach you how to do these movements, and how a lot of people just like, how can I work on strength? How can I work at being explosive? How can I work and do all those things? But they forget, and how to use those things is also very, very important. And a lot of times more important than training strength, right?
Hmm.
You're naturally strong. I mean, if you're a basketball player, you've been playing basketball since you were like 12, you're
Hmm.
naturally strong for the sport. But a lot of players don't know how to use it. You know, that's why, for example, you see a point guard boxing out a big man, and you know, just because the point guard has different angles, he knows how to use his body a lot more than the big man. So
Right.
we teach you like, hey, you're gonna get stronger, but at the same time, we're gonna teach you how to use your strength, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talk about having a high draft pick come in. A guy like Michael Porter Jr. comes in. You guys draft him. He's got back injuries. How are you trying to balance the added pressure that he probably has on him from the community, from the organization, from society as a whole, and you know when you're still trying to make sure that he comes back 100% healthy, and like to your point, moving correctly, still putting on the right size coming into the NBA. He still as a young kid, right?
Yeah, I think you know, Michael is one of the best athletes I ever trained. I mean, he is very impressive. I mean, I think the best thing that happened for him, and it's tough when you come in, you have that talent, and you have to wait a year to play. It's very, very tough. But I think that's the best thing that happened to him, right? So if you
Hmm.
see the 76ers, for example, they drafted, I mean, they did like a 4-year process where they drafted number one, number two, and you're
Hmm.
like, you're going to sit out the season. You're not going to play. So you
Hmm.
have a year to develop a player, and then they come back the second year and they're studs. In my opinion, that might help Mike in the long run, right?
Hmm.
You see Ben Simmons, you see Embiid, and all those guys didn't play their first season. Um, so that being said, I think that like, I mean, he's only like 20, 21 years old too, you know, so it's like people forget how young those players are. You know, we have another player, Bol Bol, that's like, he is 19, just turned 20 years old, and he has a lot of potential, you know, but you know what people don't understand is like, hey, we are the third best team in the West, you
Yeah.
know, and they're like, well, why don't you play Michael? Why don't you play Bobo? And it's like, it's tough because you're trying to win a championship and you're trying to develop a player. It's very tough, you know. So, um, I mean, it just like those guys, you got to keep working, right? It's just you got to keep working with those guys and just like make sure they're prepared for 2 years from now, 3 years from now, where you know it's go time for them.
Well, and you
Um,
going through, you guys have, and like you said, the third ranked team in the in the Western Conference, and then you take that one step further. You've got so many young players in your team as it is. I mean, a guy like Jamal Murray's in his early 20s. Nikola Jokic is still a young center in the league, who's arguably the most dominant center in the league. So you've got all of these guys coming through. You're competing for that top spot in the Western Conference, and you've got guys like Bol Bol who are expecting to come in and dominate. And you know, you bring up Ball. What is that like training a guy with that kind of length? Are you having to make some serious modifications to his training schedule as well?
yeah, I mean, like I was telling you, with him, it's about teaching,
Mm.
about showing him different positions that he can be used for his body. You know, I mean, he's so tall, but I mean, he is so talented. I mean, he's so tall and he's like a two guard. It's
Yeah.
unbelievable. Like he can shoot well, he can move very well. I mean, I've seen some like highlights of like during practice and things like that. It's like 3-on-3 that he's playing. People just like, you know, like you can play and that, and he just goes off and just like unstoppable, right? Um, so I did make, you know, we have to make some modifications as we do for everybody else, but um, I think, like I said, I think with the younger players, is just teaching them, just adapting them to our system, to what we do, and you know, try to adapt them to the NBA. But you're right. I mean, we have a young team, um, but I was super excited to see what we'll be doing this, like what we'll do in the playoffs this year, just because the year before we almost went to the Western Conference Finals, and this year I had a good feeling about it, but unfortunately, you know, we don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, you guys were sitting at a 43-22 record before the quarantine break, what have you guys been doing during this quarantine time to keep players in shape, ready for whether there is a potential rebirth of the season? How are you guys staying prepared?
So I'm prepared. The guys like we're gonna play. Right. So
Okay.
the league haven't told us like you're gonna not gonna play or you're gonna play yet, which hopefully soon they will tell us. But since day one, since week one, I'm preparing the guys to play. So it was easier. I'm not gonna lie, like 5 weeks ago. Now it's just like everybody's like, what are we doing? What are we
Yeah.
training for? Because there's no guidance, which should be, the opposite, because now they should be training harder to come back. But when we first played, I mean, we were playing Dallas. We were, when we found out that the league would shut down. So that was a very confusing time for everyone, like what now kind of thing. And then from that day on, I mean, it was like shut down. Everybody's like, she's only going to be shut down for a couple of weeks. But now you're here almost 2 months, kind of without season. So what we're doing is I order players bikes. I order players Peloton bikes for their houses. So they're doing Peloton to keep in shape. I order them like some equipment, some bands and resistant bands for the guys. And I have an application that I put all the workouts in. And I mean, it's kind of up to them to do the workouts and keep following the program. So when we come back, if we come back, they are ready to go, so.
And are you doing during the season, when you're doing these workouts, are you focusing primarily on making sure that their cardiovascular abilities are staying strong, as well as they're maintaining that certain muscle mass, or how are you making sure that they don't taper off near the end of the season?
I mean, it's just about programming. It's about having a master plan that we have, a periodization. And I mean, I'm getting everybody ready to play the game, so it's different for a development player and versus a starter, right? So it's like the starter is not going to do as much cardio as a development player will. So I'm just trying to keep every single capacity ready to go. Your vascular, your conditioning going, your cardiovascular, your strength, and ready to play the game. So it's like it's a combination of everything. Just depends what group you fall in. If you're a starter, you're gonna do less conditioning. You're gonna do more like injury reduction kind of thing. If you are a development guy and it's like just expect to work hard, and like we're gonna do big things. So.
Have you during quarantine, have you been watching any of The Last Dance with MJ?
Yes.
Yeah.
Actually, just I finished yesterday because I fell asleep on Sunday. But it's amazing, man. It was unbelievable.
So how much do you think has the game progressed from that time when you've got a guy who's smoking 6 cigars a day? I mean, I'm sure that probably wouldn't be in their regimen at this current state in the NBA, but how much do you think that kind of documentary inspires a younger generation to perform to that next level, just showing how much drive and dedication Jordan had as an athlete?
Well, I mean, we can make the argument. It's like, did the game progress or regress from what it was, right? Because the game, if you watch the documentary, it was so much more physical then than what it is now. I mean, if you see a chart, that floats around in the NBA, the amount of shooting 3-point shots today versus 10 years ago is just ridiculous. Like you see a heat map and it's like 40% more outside than inside the 3-point line. So, I mean, being physical, it's very interesting because everybody tells you like, hey, don't drink, don't smoke, sleep well. I mean, that's my job to tell the guys to perform. And then you see Michael Jordan, like you said, smoke 6 cigars a day, which I don't know, what the quantity or anything else, but like he's Michael Jordan also, like, you know what I mean? So it's like, I don't know. It's tough. It's tough because it shows the younger generation that maybe you can do different things and you're still going to play basketball well. That's the bad part. But like what people realize pretty quickly is that you're not Michael Jordan. like,
Mm.
you know. So I love the documentary. It was so cool to see. I mean, one of my favorite players ever was Dennis Rodman,
Oh, okay.
and just watching him talk about how he rebounded, how he knew where the ball went. Even with all the parties and everything that he liked to do, I think as a basketball player, he's pretty unique.
How
So
about the fact that he decided during the NBA Finals, I'm gonna screw off from practice, go do a WWE wrestling match quickly, and then come back the next day and not expect there to be any repercussions.
I think I think it was crazy. I was like, I couldn't believe it. But I think the best part that I got out from that is Hugh Jackson.
Yeah,
How cool is the
amazing.
coach? Like, hey, you got to keep your team together. This guy just pretty much messed up,
Yeah.
and then you got to keep your team together. And it is what it is. We're here, like we played the whole season. We're here to win a championship, and you keep your team together after that. It's unbelievable. And even like talking to the media is like, hey, he's not bothering me, he's bothering you guys. It's just like,
Yeah.
just stop. So it was pretty cool to see that.
Yeah, and for Phil to not overreact, to your point, like, most coaches in the NBA would be saying, "Oh, you know what, that's it." But he didn't even know where he was. Like, he had no idea. With social media nowadays, people are able to keep track. But back then, you don't have any idea, and the guy could be thousands of miles away in Vegas, right? It was wild. I couldn't believe it. That was one of the coolest parts, just seeing all the behind the scenes action that you don't get to see even nowadays with all the social media, right? It's that film crew had so much access to behind the scenes. It was insane, especially for a guy with the amount of prestige that Jordan had, right?
For sure.
um so let's bring it back to, are you constantly doing research during the season to try and make sure that you're on top of your game? Do you have a team behind you that's doing science and data research, or what's your workload like on a day-to-day basis? Take us through what that looks like for Felipe.
Yeah, I mean, we're always trying to get better. I think we have a good group of teams. So I think they're with the team medical, we call it high performance unit. We have 7 people that travels everywhere, that responsible for their development, responsible for getting them better. I mean, injuries. We have a massage therapist. So we all try to work together to make sure the player's ready. The player's ready to go, right? So we are doing research. We are, I mean, reading different things, maybe modifying according to new research and new literature that comes out. But I mean, a daily routine would be, I mean, I believe that the guy should be lifting every day. I
Mm,
mean, I also got to protect my job, right?
yeah.
But I think that how to lift, and which I show every guy is like, hey, you're not gonna come in and you're gonna spend an hour in the weight room during the season. Your workout's gonna be 20 minutes. It's gonna be 15, 20 minutes, maybe 30. Depends what
Mm.
position. Depends, what group you fall in. So I feel like lifting every day, it's a lot more beneficial for NBA players versus having a long lift during the week.
Mm.
So I think the main focus for us is consistency. Like, just be consistent and be on time, be a pro, and the rest is just, it's gonna happen.
I was listening to a New Jersey Devils sports science coach of the NHL on an In Goal Mag podcast. Bless you.
Sorry.
And no, that's okay. And one of the things that they were talking about was the steady state cardio versus, high intensity. Is that something that, given basketball and hockey, different sports but similar in the sense that they require a lot of cardiovascular abilities, is there a place for the 5 kilometer or 10 kilometer run as an athlete, or is it more beneficial to get that 30-second burst of sprinting in?
As an athlete, yes, but as a basketball player, maybe. It's
Mm,
just tough to put a basketball player in a treadmill. I mean, I think that's
Yeah.
one of the toughest thing I face every day. Conditioning, if you don't do the conditioning on the court, the players, it's gonna be tough for the players to do conditioning. I mean, depends on the player, of course, but I yes, we do have to have the best conditioning. I mean, we have to run long distances and things like that. But I believe that once the players don't get bored and one, they work very hard, short bursts of conditioning here and there, doing a Tabata, doing some sprints, high intensity sprints and things like that. It's a lot more effective than doing a long run, a long distance conditioning with the players. Um, Yes, right now. I mean, because like I said, the players get bored. They don't work hard enough. They go over, 15, 20 minutes of running. It's just, it's tough. Not every player,
Hmm.
but the majority of the players. And a lot of things I do on the court. So like, hey, you're also gonna have a basketball in your hand. It's just like you're playing basketball. So for hockey, it's a little bit different because I mean, those guys are incredible. I've seen testing day for hockey for conditioning on the bike, and I left that testing. I was like, wow, I can do better with my guys just because we do similar testing, but we do running and they do on the bike, but like those guys won't stop until they drop. Like don't have anything in their tank, and I've seen basketball players stop in the middle of the test, like, I'm done. And you're like, no, you're not, but
Mm.
it's just the difference.
Yeah.
So it's very important. It's very important. And I mean, for us too, if you really think about Denver, we are in a mile high that we call Denver a mile high, which the
Yeah.
altitude is very high. So if we are in better shape than the other players or the other teams, we have the advantage of having the altitude. So it's very important to stay, a cardiovascular shape to answer your question.
Yeah, I think that's probably an interesting note. The Nuggets, the Colorado Avalanche, and the Broncos probably all have a little added advantage being all their training, or the majority of their training is done a mile higher than everyone else, right? Um, I've got a couple more questions as far as how much more do you think that the NBA has become an international league now, instead of just that American league. You've got players, even for instance, like Jamal Murray. Shout out to the Canadian boy because we're in Canada here. I'd be remiss if I didn't bring him up on the podcast. But you've got guys like Jokic who are they're coming from across the world now instead of it being American dominant. Even for yourself, how much more do you see the NBA becoming a international league now?
Um, from when I started to now, I see a big difference. I
Mm,
feel like the league grew so much, and it's like we had a game in London uh 3 years ago, I believe, and that was incredible. Like there was so many people. That was like I didn't know that we had that many followers outside the United States, for your point. Um but I think for players, becoming international league, it's just like it just depends who if you can play. I think
mm,
that like they open the doors to anyone, but you have to be able to show up. You have to be able to play. It's like Yalmi. If he was tall and he wasn't be able to play basketball, he wouldn't be in the NBA. So I feel like it's more like not where you're from, but how much you can play, how well you can play.
yeah, makes total sense. So the last question that we always ask people who we have coming on the podcast is, what is some advice that you would give to a young athlete, a young basketball player who is entering into his final year of high school, trying to get to that next level? What tips and tricks of pieces of advice would you give to them to get them to that next level?
Work hard. I mean, there's no secret recipe. Hard work will always be a priority. And work smart. So it's like don't go to the gym and spend 12 hours thinking that you're gonna get better. Just make sure that you have a plan. Go to the gym for 3 hours, and make sure that you're a lot more effective than staying in the gym for a long time. So it's like don't waste your time, pretty much what I'm trying to say. Just like have a plan, and go. Like having a plan is the best thing you can do. It's just like be effective with your time. When you have to work hard, work really, really hard. And don't feel like extra is always extra, because a lot of the extra is like you're so tired that you cannot produce, and you're like, why? Just like your body is going to go through different states, and it's like a lot of times when you're shooting after 3 or 4 hours, and it's like you can't even focus anymore. It's that time you got to think about it. Like, you got to think like, is this worth it? Am I really getting better? So
Yeah, that's some great advice from the head strength and conditioning coach of the Denver Nuggets, Felipe Eichenberger. Thank you very much for joining the Athletes Podcast, man. And we'll look forward to hopefully seeing you guys compete if things return back to normal. Fingers crossed. Who knows? But it'll be certainly exciting times. That's for sure.
for sure. I mean, I can't wait to go back and play.
Yeah, we're now we've got a direct investment in the Denver Nuggets. We're in Toronto, but we will support everyone who comes on the Athletes Podcast. So we appreciate you coming on, man.
I appreciate you guys.
All right, well, take care and enjoy the rest of your day.